What is up, folks? My name is Chris. I'm your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, here with a preview of the 10-game Week 8 main slate of the regular season. In this video, I'm going to give you some of the top picks for NFL DFS lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel for this week's action. We're going to focus, as usual, on the running backs that are playing for the biggest favorites on this slate in betting markets. That usually gives us an indication of which running backs are most likely to be playing in favorable game script situations. And we're just going to get right on into it today with Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts, the number one seed in the AFC at this point. And Taylor is in a good spot to continue his dominant season here. He's facing a Titans defense that is the fifth worst rush defense in the league and below average defending running backs in the passing game. The only issue with getting Taylor into your lineups this week is going to be his cost. He's $9,500 on DraftKings, $10,200 here on FanDuel, which I have on the screen right now. And he's going to be in the top three highest owned running backs for low risk lineups, for all lineups, frankly, over on FanDuel. So I do think we can find paths to getting him in the low risk build. Over on DraftKings, it's going to be a little more difficult to get him into the lineup. My favorite play on DraftKings is actually going to be the running back that is playing for the second biggest favorite this weekend, and that is the Atlanta Falcons, favored by 8 points in their matchup with the Miami Dolphins. Bijan here is going to benefit from the fact that Miami has the 25th ranked rush defense on the year. They're the fourth worst defense defending running backs in the passing game, which has been a big focus of Atlanta's involvement with Bijan this season, with at least 5 targets in every single game this season. Seems like this will be a really, really good spot to get Bijan in all lineup types, and especially in PPR formats here on DraftKings. I love getting him as my number one high upside blue chip prospect running back, if you will. There's a lot of them this week, and that's what's going to make this slate interesting overall. And you'll notice that as we continue to go through things here. But Bijan, even though he is going to be the most popular play here on DraftKings, I still think he's well worth building around in this spot. Great matchup for him at home. And sometimes we just got to take those hits when they're given to us, guys. So moving on, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to be favored by 7.5 points here at home against the New York Giants. And Saquon has had a really disappointing fantasy season, but he is still commanding the volume in this offense. The targets have come down a little bit in the last couple of weeks, bottoming out at 1 target last week against Minnesota, but really good spot here for Barkley if Philadelphia's run blocking can improve. Philadelphia at this point actually has the worst run blocking offensive line in the league by adjusted line yards. That's probably a big reason why Saquon hasn't been wowing us in the box score this season. He has a chance to correct that because the Giants are the second worst rush defense in the league, and they are dead on league average defending running backs in the passing game. I know we had a little bit of a discussion in the comments last week about the Giants rush defense maybe being better than advertised, but I think we have a chance here for Saquon to go back and get a little bit of revenge here. I mean, come on, guys. Yeah, only 58 yards 2 weeks ago, but almost 5 yards a carry. Hopefully Philadelphia can actually keep this game competitive and maybe come out ahead here and flip the script from their matchup a couple weeks ago in the Meadowlands there against the Giants. That's the hope here, but probably only a high-risk play given some of the other things that we can fit in this week at running back. The Buffalo Bills are favored by 7 points on the road against the Carolina Panthers. James Cook, despite this coaching staff saying they want to limit his work and keep him fresh for the stretch run into January and hopefully February for a Super Bowl appearance, they continue to run him into the ground here, guys. He gets a ton of volume in this offense. No touchdowns over the last couple of weeks of play. They're coming off the bye week here, so he's going to be extra fresh and rested. Best run blocking offensive line in the league. That's what the Colts have. That's what the Bills have this year. But they're facing a Panthers defense that is the third best rush defense in the league, third best defending running backs in the passing game. So once again, I think James Cook at a nice price here, high risk only this week. Ramondre Stevenson and the Patriots, they're favored by 7 points in their matchup this week at home against the Cleveland Browns. We're not going to be playing a running back against the best rush defense in the league. So I think we can just move on there. Now, other running backs that are going to be really popular this week, you see a couple of them on the screen here. Derrick Henry, the Baltimore Ravens look poised to finally get Lamar Jackson back under center off the bye, and that completely changes the narrative around this team. This is the Ravens team when he's under center that we were expecting, at least on offense, as far as productivity goes, and they got to crank up the urgency all the way to 10 or 12 here, guys, right? Because the Ravens, 1-5, they really got to start banking wins if they want to have any shot at a appearance in the postseason this winter. Henry, volume certainly there. Opportunity certainly there this week. The Bears, below average against running backs on the ground, second worst against running backs in the passing game. That might actually benefit Justice Hill a little bit, but we know Henry is always capable of breaking a big long run however he gets the ball in his hands. At a bottomed out price here of $6,000 on DraftKings, I'm going to be buying that and getting him into all of my lineups here this week personally. Also, we have Rachaad White with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, the receiver situation has been a revolving door for Baker Mayfield here with all the injuries, unfortunately. Mike Evans back on injured reserve. Chris Godwin, he's been up and down. Igbuka, although he's been great, dealing with a little bit of a hamstring issue. Running back has been the consistency here with White over the last few weeks since taking over for Bucky Irving, and has a great situation here against New Orleans on the road. The Saints are the 21st ranked rush defense on the year, 24th defending running backs in the passing game, and White is certainly capable of handling the work here. Modest price on both sites, and that's why ultimately you will see him here featured in a ton of low-risk lineups. I do think White and Derrick Henry are going to be featured in that core three for running backs for low-risk lineups across both sites this week, guys, and basically it's going to depend where you play from there. Over on FanDuel, once again, I think Jonathan Taylor is who most people are going to be playing. On DraftKings here, I think it's Bijan Robinson. And that leaves high upside backs like Christian McCaffrey on the outside looking in. There's nothing wrong with playing Christian McCaffrey. His price is right up there with Jonathan Taylor. The PPR volume, incredible here, but his ownership may end up being a little bit lower than expected on DraftKings because of some of these other guys that the field is trying to get to. So the bevy of options that you have here makes this a really fun slate. I wouldn't sneeze at or scoff at or laugh at anybody that is deviating from the core popular three running backs this week in low risk contests, but we found that just kind of sticking with projected ownership usually is the way to go there. And that's why I take the time to go through these opportunities here. Looking at some of the other spots this week, Dalton Schultz has over a 20% target share in this Texans offense. So he's like the clear low risk play at tight end here, especially on DraftKings with a $3,300 price tag. Obviously, you have to monitor his questionable status here, but if he is able to go, I think you will find him in the vast majority of low risk lineups this week at the tight end position, alongside the usual suspects, right, guys? Obviously, Tyler Warren, Colts have the highest implied team total this week. If you're not getting Jonathan Taylor in there, we do have to find maybe somewhere to get a Colts piece into our lineups. I'll have more on that in a minute. We also have George Kittle, National Tight End Week, finally returning to the starting lineup here for the 49ers. He actually looks like he might be semi-popular according to what's in our model at this point for projected ownership. So he looks like another play for low-risk lineups. And then those favored Atlanta Falcons, Kyle Pitts, he's also going to be very popular this week for low risk. Personally, I think Dalton Schultz is the best place to go, but these are basically the direction I think. This is basically the direction I think the field will be going, and I think there's nothing wrong with tailing that with Dalton Schultz. Defense, the Jets are looking to either play a quarterback who has been consistently terrible in Justin Fields or make a switch to Tyrod Taylor, who also is dealing with a knee issue. I think the Bengals end up being your most popular defense in low-risk contests, especially on DraftKings here this week at their low price. But we also have the Philadelphia Eagles, the New York Giants, and the Baltimore Ravens as strong options, according to our model, for low-risk contests this week, guys. So please feel free to use those in your player pools. So now we got to talk about what to do at receiver, because if we're paying up at running back for one of Bijan or CMC or Jonathan Taylor, we're paying up for like a Lamar Jackson at quarterback, which I think the field will be playing basically either Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts here on DraftKings. We're living in this mid-range at the wide receiver position, right? Jamar Chase is going to be very, very popular this week, but if we play him in low risk, we've got $39.50 per player remaining. We have to kind of settle for wide receiver twos, fringe guys for the last two wide receivers. So I think your only play here, if you're going to play Jamar Chase, is to come down a little bit at quarterback to somebody a little lower of a price tag, and maybe that is Joe Flacco. Just pair him with Jamar Chase. That certainly seems like that might be the more viable way to do it. But I think my preferred path is to just play these underpriced wide receiver ones once again in low risk contests. And we're going to start with Baltimore and Zay Flowers. Lamar Jackson giving a huge lift to every piece in this offense. Flowers, the number one opportunity pass catcher in this offense. He's going to be extremely popular at wide receiver in low risk contests this week. We also have options with Drake London, who's a little bit more expensive than I would like, but hard to argue with his target share, 10 plus targets the last three Falcons games. You could certainly consider him. 4,200 per player remaining. I think if these were the two that you were going to go with, I don't have a problem doing this and playing a little bit of a skill player against the defense. We saw 9 targets last week for Josh Reynolds from Tyrod Taylor and Justin Fields. It looks like Garrett Wilson is in line to miss again this week. Josh Reynolds is one of our underperforming wide receivers this week as well. Check out the daily plug linked in the description of the video below for the full list of underperforming wide receivers here in week 8. But if we get Josh Reynolds wide receiver 1 treatment again for this Jets offense against this Bengals defense, then he's going to be in a good position to succeed here at a modest cost. I think another way, though, that you can go here is maybe pay down a little bit from London. I continue to mention Stephon Diggs week in and week out, guys, because he's the number 1 opportunity receiver in this Patriots offense. They're playing a very favorable schedule. They're playing a pass funnel defense here, with the Browns being extremely stout against the run. I would expect the Patriots to shift to more of an up-tempo, quick-release offense in the passing game. And Stephon Diggs has been basically Drake May's binky in the middle of the field. No touchdowns just yet on the season, but he is catching almost 90% of his targets this season. And the touchdown regression is going to come, and we want to be there on the right side of that crooked number when it finally hits. I think this week there's an opportunity for that. I think he's going to be one of the more popular plays in low-risk contests on both sites this week. 5,800 on DraftKings sounds good to me. We have 4,800 for a final wide receiver spot. The field looks like there's going to be a couple of different places it's going to go here if you play this way. Rashid Shaheed with the Saints against those Buccaneers is one of the more popular looking plays in our model this week. And then we also have Alec Pierce is an underperforming wide receiver for the Colts here with Daniel Jones under center. He had 240 plus air yards last week alone on his 10 targets. Still no touchdowns on the year for Pierce, and his high average depth of target, high upside role. Kind of a tournament-ish play, but seems well in the mix here, I think, for low-risk contests. So I certainly have no problem going either of those two directions here to finish off a DraftKings low-risk build. Over on FanDuel, this week at the quarterback position, yeah, I do think Jackson and Jalen Hurts are going to be your popular guys on DraftKings, but you see they're almost $9,000 here on FanDuel. They are appropriately priced. Looking at our model a little bit here, and here's the quarterback model. I'll give you a little bit of a quick free preview. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Bo Nix in the high 7,000s, or Daniel Jones, I think, or Drake May at 7,600. I think that's where the field is going to go for some low-risk builds here on FanDuel. So if we want to just take the easy way out and play the highest implied team total offense in the Colts with Daniel Jones, get a little mini stack here of him and Jonathan Taylor in low risk, 62.33 per player remaining for receivers. And we can get a handful of those receivers that we liked over on DraftKings into the lineup here. Diggs is the primary target for me here. Mentioned Rashid Shaheed as a popular low risk play. We have 6,800 left. I'm partial in this range to either Chris Olave, maybe two Saints, doesn't feel right for low risk, or Devontae Smith, who has actually commanded a decent amount of volume from Jalen Hurts in recent weeks and has been extremely efficient. We're obviously box score chasing last week's 31 point half point PPR game here on FanDuel a little bit, but I actually think I like Smith a little bit better than AJ Brown this week on both sites. So I think you could certainly play like this. As I kind of look at this, I kind of think I actually prefer Drake May to Daniel Jones this week. Feels like there's less risk to lose a ton of production to a stud running back with the Patriots offense. Pairs nicely with Stephon Diggs. So that's kind of how low risk is looking in my book right now, guys. High risk contests. Don't have to get too crazy this week. We have a 51 point total game in the late window. Dallas is going to Denver, and I like the Dallas side the most here, the slight underdog side here. Dak, CeeDee Lamb. Mixing it up a little bit at the running back position with Javonte actually is something I am interested in as well. We can still get Derrick Henry. We can still get popular Bijan Robinson into our lineup here on DraftKings. We can get the aforementioned Dalton Schultz in here. We can get that Bengals D in here. We got 40-50 per player remaining. The reason I like the Dallas stack the most, we have two underperforming wide receivers on the Denver Broncos offense this week. Wide receiver 1, Cortland Sutton, is one of them. He doesn't fit with the build that I'm working on right here, but Troy Franklin at a tasty $4,200 here on DraftKings, he is underperforming his opportunity by a significant amount this week. He's actually our number 1 underperforming wide receiver in the model. And if you've been following along for the last few weeks, you know our underperforming wide receiver list has been very kind to us in recent weeks. Franklin has underperformed his expectation by about 23 fantasy points over the last 3 Broncos games. He's got 22 fantasy points on an expectation of 45. He, in this offense, when we look at how Denver is using their pass catchers over their last 3 weeks of play. He has 17.5% of team targets, 30% of team air yards, just 1 touchdown in the last 3 weeks, despite having an above average workload in that offense, a fairly comparable workload to Cortland Sutton, frankly, at a fraction of the cost here. So like getting him in here, 3,900 for a final receiver. I think I already mentioned one that would work. That's also an underperforming wide receiver this week. Guys, that is kind of how things are looking for week 8 here in the National Football League. Let me know your thoughts about week 8 in the comments below. Keep an eye on the updates for any injuries or news over the weekend. We will be updating the Daily Plug. And as always, leave some comments in the comment section about some of your favorite plays this week, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have about week 8. Good luck this week, and I'll be back next week to talk to you about week 9.